I'm John, 34 male, and my fiancée tried to trap me for my house and business, so I let her think she'd won before leaving her with nothing. It sounds like the plot of a cheap thriller, the kind of story you hear about happening to other people, a cautionary tale shared between friends over a drink. But for me, it was 6 months of calculated deception, a performance that required me to smile at the woman I loved while secretly dismantling the future she was trying to steal from me. Our life, or the life I thought we had, was supposed to be a success story. We lived in a beautiful cedar and glass home I had built on the outskirts of the city, nestled in a quiet patch of woods that felt a world away from the urban sprawl. I designed it myself, pouring every bit of my soul into the blueprints. It was more than a house. It was a symbol of everything I had worked for. My company, a software development firm I started in my garage with nothing but a second-hand computer and an idea, had finally become a force in the industry. We created bespoke management systems for logistics companies, a niche but incredibly profitable field. It was my baby, born from sleepless nights, immense risk, and a stubborn refusal to fail. And then there was Chloe. When she came into my life 2 years ago, it felt like the final, perfect piece had clicked into place. She was a freelance marketing consultant, intelligent and ambitious, with a laugh that could make you forget a stressful day. She seemed to understand the pressure I was under, the weight of carrying a company on my shoulders. When I came home late, exhausted and mentally drained from a coding problem or a difficult client, she wouldn't complain. She'd be there with a warm meal and an ear ready to listen, her presence a calming balm on my frayed nerves. I remember one night about a year into our relationship when we were on the verge of landing our biggest contract yet. The deal was fragile and the client was demanding a last-minute feature that our system wasn't built for. My team and I worked around the clock for a week straight. I was living on coffee and adrenaline, barely sleeping, convinced the whole thing was going to fall apart. I came home one evening, or rather early one morning, defeated. I'd hit a wall, a bug in the code that seemed insurmountable. I walked into the kitchen at 3 a.m. to find Chloe asleep at the table, her head resting on her arms. Next to her was a flask of hot coffee, a plate of sandwiches, and a handwritten note that read, "You're the smartest man I know. You'll figure it out. I believe in you." In that moment, I felt a surge of love so powerful it almost brought me to my knees. She was my rock, my biggest cheerleader. We got the contract the next day. I asked her to marry me a month later. She said yes on a trip to the coast, on a windswept bluff overlooking the ocean. The ring I'd had custom-made sparkled in the sunset, and her tears seemed to be tears of pure joy. We spent the next several months in a bubble of blissful wedding planning. We argued playfully over color schemes and tasted dozens of cakes. It all felt so wonderfully normal, so real. Looking back now with the bitter clarity of hindsight, the warning signs were there. They were small, almost imperceptible cracks in the beautiful facade of our relationship. I remember one evening we were having dinner with friends, another couple who were going through a messy divorce. The wife, our friend, was distraught. Her husband had controlled all the finances and she was struggling to get her fair share. Later that night, as we were getting ready for bed, Chloe made a comment that struck me as odd. "It's a shame," she said, brushing her hair in the mirror. "She's a sweet woman, but she never played her cards right. You have to protect yourself." I asked her what she meant. She just shrugged and smiled. "It's a tough world out there. A woman has to be smart." I dismissed it as a cynical but harmless observation. I thought she was talking about being independent, which I admired. I didn't realize she was talking about strategy. Our life continued to feel perfect. We took a trip to Italy for my birthday, a whirlwind tour of Rome and Florence. We stood in the Colosseum, ate gelato by the Trevi Fountain, and held hands in the Uffizi Gallery. One night in a small trattoria in a quiet Florentine alley, she reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm so lucky, John," she said, her eyes shining with what I was certain was love. "You've built this incredible life. I can't wait to officially be a part of it." I felt like the luckiest man in the world. I was building an empire and I had a queen to share it with. The business I had poured my blood, sweat, and tears into was not just mine anymore. It was for us. It was the foundation of the family I hoped we would build. The shift began subtly, about 8 months before the wedding. It started with little questions, innocent sounding. Inquiries about the business. Who would take over if something happened to you? Is the house legally protected? I answered them openly, happy that she was taking an interest in the more complex parts of my life. But then the questions became more pointed, tinged with a new and unfamiliar anxiety. She started talking more and more about her friend's divorce, about women who were left with nothing. One Sunday afternoon, as we were lounging in the living room, the sunlight streaming through the large picture windows, she turned to me with a serious expression. "John," she began, her voice soft and hesitant, "I've been thinking a lot about us, about our future, and I feel insecure." The word hung in the air, completely at odds with the comfortable, solid life that surrounded us. This was the first thread she pulled, the beginning of the unraveling of everything I thought was true. The word insecure became Chloe's new refrain. It was the anchor for a slow, methodical campaign of emotional manipulation that unfolded over the next few weeks. It wasn't a single, clumsy demand for money or property. It was far more insidious than that. It was a series of carefully orchestrated conversations, each one designed to prey on my love for her and my desire to make her happy. "It's not about the money, John," she would say, her eyes welling up with convincing tears. "I would love you if you lived in a cardboard box. It's about feeling like a true partner. Right now, I feel like a guest in your life, in your house. I want us to be a real team, building everything together." She would often bring up her freelance work, sighing about how unstable it was compared to my business. "If something happened to me, you'd be fine," she'd murmur. "But if something happened to you, where would I be?" "I'd be on the street." It was a wild exaggeration, but it was delivered with such practiced vulnerability that it was hard to dismiss. The suggestions started small. She proposed we open a new joint bank account where we would pool our incomes. I agreed immediately. It seemed like a normal, healthy step for a couple about to be married. We set it up, and I began depositing a portion of my salary into it, a gesture that seemed to please her immensely. But it was only the beginning. A week later, she escalated. We were in the kitchen and she was looking over the catering proposal for the wedding. She let out a long, theatrical sigh. "All of this," she said, gesturing around the expansive, custom-built kitchen, "it's all yours. I love it, but it's not ours." I told her that of course it was ours, that once we were married, everything I had would be hers too. She shook her head, a sad little smile on her face. "Legally, that's not true, John, not really. A friend of mine, her husband used to say that all the time. 'What's mine is yours, baby.' Then he left her and she found out his lawyer had protected everything. She had to fight for years. Then came the pitch. 'As a sign of our trust,' she said, looking me directly in the eye, her expression a perfect blend of hope and fear, 'as a way to show me that you mean it when you say we're a team, I think you should add my name to the deed of the house, before the wedding, so I can walk down that aisle knowing I'm coming home to our home.' My internal alarms, silent for so long, began to ring faintly. It felt transactional, but her logic was so emotionally compelling. She wasn't asking for a car or jewelry, she was asking for a symbol of belonging. I told her I would think about it. Before I could, she dropped the other shoe. It was a few days later, after I'd closed another major deal for my company. We were celebrating with a fancy dinner at home. She raised her glass of champagne. "To you," she said, "and to the empire you've built, I'm so proud of you." She let the moment hang in the air before continuing. "You know, what would really make me feel like a part of that empire is if I had a real stake in it. I have a marketing background. I could help you grow it in ways you haven't even thought of." I smiled. "I'd love your input, Chloe, you know that." "No, I mean a real stake," she said, her voice dropping to a serious tone. "Make me a partner, John, a majority partner. Let the world see that we are a power couple, that this business isn't just you anymore, it's us." Now the alarms were screaming. My business was the culmination of a decade of my life. It represented my greatest risks and my greatest triumphs. Handing over a majority stake to anyone, let alone someone with no experience in my industry, was unthinkable. It wasn't just a bad business decision, it was corporate suicide. I tried to explain this to her gently, telling her about shareholder agreements, board responsibilities, and the complexities of the company's legal structure. Every logical point I made was met with a wall of emotion. "So you don't trust me," she'd say, her lip trembling. "I pour my heart out to you. I asked to be your true partner in life, and you talk to me about lawyers and board members. This proves my point. I'm an outsider." The pressure was immense. Our home, once a sanctuary, became a stage for this ongoing emotional drama. Every conversation was a minefield. If I resisted, I was untrusting and unloving. If I agreed, I would be risking everything I had ever built on a promise. Feeling cornered, I did what I always did when faced with a complex problem. I called my best friend David. David wasn't just my friend since college, he was also my corporate lawyer. He had helped me set up the company and had advised me through every major milestone. I framed the conversation as a hypothetical. "Hey Dave," I said, pacing in my office. "Quick question, let's say a guy is getting married and his fiancée, she wants to feel more secure. So she hypothetically asks to be put on the deed to his house and made a partner in his business before the wedding." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "John," David said finally, his voice carefully neutral, "is this a hypothetical or are we talking about you and Chloe?" "Just a thought experiment," I lied poorly. "Okay," he said, drawing out the word. "My advice to this hypothetical guy would be to run, not walk, to a lawyer's office to draft the tightest prenuptial agreement in human history. Adding a non-contributing party to a deed before marriage is a massive red flag. Making her a majority partner in a privately owned successful tech firm is, I don't even have a word for it, it's beyond reckless. When I floated the idea of a prenup to Chloe, her reaction was explosive. It was the only time I had ever seen her truly angry. A prenup, she shrieked, her face flushed. You want me to sign a document that outlines how our marriage will fail? After all my fears about being left with nothing, your solution is a legal document that guarantees I'll be left with nothing. That is the most insulting, unromantic thing I have ever heard. I can't believe you. Her outrage was so profound, so seemingly genuine, that it made me doubt myself. Was I the cold, calculating one? Was David, with his lawyerly cynicism, poisoning my view of what should be a relationship built on absolute trust? I was torn between my heart, which still loved this woman, and my gut, which was telling me something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. The breaking point was approaching. I felt it. I was exhausted from the constant emotional battle. I was on the verge of caving, of just giving her what she wanted to restore the peace and bring back the happy, smiling woman I'd fallen in love with. One Tuesday evening, Chloe went out for dinner with her best friend, a woman named Jessica whom I'd never particularly liked. I was working late in my home office, trying to concentrate but finding my mind drifting back to the same circular argument. I needed to look up some details for an upcoming presentation and realized I'd left my tablet in the living room. Chloe S. was sitting on the coffee table. She had the same model, and on impulse, I picked it up to quickly check the specs online. I unlocked the screen and the browser opened, but behind it a messaging app was still active. It was open to her conversation with Jessica. The last message, sent just moments before, was right there on the screen. Jessica, so is he going to do it? Is he going to sign the house over? Chloe, he's almost there. A few more tears and another speech about my insecurity and he'll fold. He's so naive, he'll do anything for me. My blood ran cold, I froze, my hand hovering over the screen. It was an invasion of privacy, a line I never thought I'd cross. But I couldn't stop myself, I scrolled up. And as I read, the floor fell out from beneath my world. The screen of the tablet felt unnaturally bright in the dim light of the living room, each word glowing with a malevolent energy. My heart started hammering against my ribs, a frantic, panic drumbeat. It felt like I was plunging into ice-cold water, the shock of it stealing the air from my lungs. I sank onto the sofa, my legs suddenly unable to support me. My finger trembled as I scrolled up, dragging the history of my own destruction into view. The conversation went back weeks, a running commentary on her meticulous plan. It was all there in stark black and white, a detailed blueprint of her betrayal. Chloe, the insecurity angle is working perfectly. He's starting to look guilty every time I bring it up. The key is to make him feel like giving me what I want is his idea, his grand romantic gesture. Jessica and the business, that's the real prize. Chloe, patience. I planted the seed last night, called it our empire. Men like him are suckers for legacy. I made it about us building something together. He'll resist at first, but he loves me. His love is my leverage. I felt a wave of nausea. His love is my leverage. She had taken the most profound emotion I felt for her and identified it as a tool, a weakness to be exploited. I kept scrolling, my eyes scanning the text with a horrified fascination. They had discussed which lawyers were the most aggressive in divorce settlements. They had shared links to luxury real estate in other cities, places Chloe planned to move to once she had her money. Jessica, what if he insists on a prenup? Your whole plan goes up in smoke. Chloe, I've got that covered. I'll make it about romance. I'll act so offended and hurt that he'll feel like a monster for even suggesting it. I made him feel that way yesterday and he backed down immediately. He's putty. Putty, that's what I was to her. Not a partner, not the love of her life, but a malleable resource to be shaped and squeezed for profit. The most damning exchange was about the end game. Jessica, how long do you have to stay married to him for it to be legit? Chloe, my research says a year or two is safest. I'll be the perfect doting wife. Then I'll find a reason. He works too much, he's emotionally distant, something I can sell to a judge. By then, half of everything is legally mine. The house, the business shares, it's foolproof. Foolproof? I set the tablet down on the cushion beside me as if it were burning my skin. The silence of the house was deafening. Every object, every piece of furniture we had picked out together seemed to mock me. The framed photo of us on the mantelpiece, taken the day we got engaged, was a monument to a lie. Her smile, which I had always seen as radiant and genuine, now looked predatory. I stood up and walked through the house, my house, seeing it all with new, violated eyes. This wasn't our sanctuary, it was a stage. Our relationship wasn't a partnership, it was a long con. The woman I was going to marry, the person I trusted with my heart and my future, saw me as nothing more than a mark. The devastation was absolute, a gaping chasm that opened up in my chest. It wasn't just anger I felt, it was a profound, hollow sadness. The love I had felt was real, at least on my side, and the thought that it had been reflected back to me as a calculated performance was a wound deeper than any financial loss. My mind raced. I thought about her supportive words during that stressful product launch. Was her belief in me fake? Did she sit there writing that note about how smart I was while secretly thinking about how my intelligence was generating the wealth she planned to take? Every shared memory was now tainted, replaying in my mind as a scene from a twisted play where I was the only one who didn't know the script. A cold, sharp clarity cut through the fog of my grief. I had to act. My first instinct was to confront her, to throw the tablet at her feet the moment she walked through the door and watch her perfect mask crumble. I wanted to scream, to rage, to demand an explanation for how she could be so cruel. But as I stood there, trembling with a mixture of fury and heartbreak, a different idea began to form. What would a confrontation achieve? She would deny it. She would cry, lie, and twist the narrative until I was the villain for invading her privacy. She had already proven herself to be a master manipulator, and if I just kicked her out, she would walk away, facing no consequences for her scheme, free to find another target. No, that wasn't justice. She had called me naive, she had called me putty, she thought I would fold. She had underestimated me completely. She saw my love as a weakness, but she had overlooked my intelligence and my resolve. She had wanted to play a game for the highest stakes. Fine, we would play, but we would play by my rules. With shaking hands, I picked up my phone and took pictures of the entire text conversation, every single damning message. I screenshotted everything, backed it up to a secure cloud drive, and then backed it up again. Evidence, cold, hard proof. Then I carefully placed her tablet back on the coffee table, exactly where I had found it. I went into my office, closed the door, and took a deep breath. I deleted the browser history on her device remotely, leaving no trace of my discovery. The man who had been heartbroken and grieving just minutes before was gone. In his place was someone cold, focused, and determined. She had tried to trap me. Now I would build a trap for her, one she would walk into willingly, smiling all the way. I looked at the clock. It was almost 10 p.m. I picked up my phone and dialed the number of the only person I knew I could trust. It rang twice before he answered, his voice groggy. "David, it's John. I'm sorry to call so late, but something has happened, something terrible. We need to talk." "No, not on the phone, in your office, first thing tomorrow." "And David, we are no longer in the realm of hypotheticals." The next morning, I walked into David's office looking like a man who hadn't slept. My face was pale, my eyes were bloodshot, and a knot of cold fury was coiled in my stomach. When I had come home from my late night at the office, Chloe was already asleep. I had laid in our bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the warmth of her body next to me like a scorching brand. Every breath she took felt like a betrayal. I feigned sleep when she kissed me goodbye in the morning, the touch of her lips on my cheek making my skin crawl. David took one look at me, ushered me into his conference room, and closed the door. "Okay," he said, his expression grim, "talk to me." I didn't say a word. I just took out my phone, connected it to the large monitor on the wall, and displayed the gallery of screenshots I had taken. I watched David's face as he read through the text messages. His professional neutrality dissolved first into shock, then into a deep, palpable anger on my behalf. He scrolled through them slowly, his jaw tightening with every message. When he reached the last one, he leaned back in his chair and let out a long, slow breath. "Well," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "That's unambiguous." He looked at me, his eyes full of concern. "John, I'm so sorry, this is monstrous." "I don't need sympathy right now, David," I said, my voice flat and steady. "I need a plan. She wants my house. She wants my business. I want to let her think she's getting it all. And then I want to pull the rug out from under her so completely that she never recovers." A flicker of something, respect, maybe even admiration, crossed David's face. He leaned forward, all business now. "Okay," he said, rubbing his hands together. "Okay, I like it. This is not legal advice for the faint of heart, but if you're committed, we can make this happen. We can build her a beautiful, gilded cage." For the next 3 hours, we mapped out the strategy. It was a multi-pronged legal and financial operation that required precision, nerve, and perfect execution. David was in his element, sketching out flowcharts on a whiteboard, his mind moving faster than I could keep up. "First, the business," he began, drawing a large box and labeling it my co. "She wants to be a majority partner. We'll make her one on paper. We're going to create a new shell corporation. Let's call it JC Holdings. It will have a fancy name, official-looking incorporation documents, the works. We will then draft a partnership agreement that makes her the 51% owner of JC Holdings. What she won't know is that JC Holdings will own absolutely nothing." It will be a legal entity with no assets, no contracts, no bank accounts. A ghost. My actual company, we decided, needed to be insulated immediately. David explained the process of restructuring it. We'll convert it into a family trust, he said. You'll no longer be the direct owner. You'll be the primary beneficiary and the trustee, which gives you full operational control, but the ownership is held by the trust itself. It's legally shielded. If she were to somehow take you to court, the company is no longer a marital asset she can touch. It's ironclad. We can file the paperwork today. Next, the house. This is even simpler, David said with a grin. We'll go to a notary, we'll have a quitclaim deed drawn up that appears to add her as a joint tenant. It will look perfect, but we're going to make a clerical error. A single, crucial digit in the property parcel number will be incorrect. The document she signs will be legally worthless. It will refer to a property that doesn't exist. It won't be filed with the county recorder, but we'll give her a beautifully notarized copy for her records. Finally, the finances. The joint account was a good start for her, David mused, but she thinks it's the gateway to your real wealth. We need to feed that perception. The plan was to open a new secondary joint account at a different bank. I would make a great show of transferring a large sum into it, say $100,000. It would be enough to make her feel rich and secure. What she wouldn't know was that I would be the primary account holder, and I would set a daily withdrawal and transfer limit of just $500. Furthermore, David would draft a document that would allow me, with a single phone call, to enact a security freeze on all my assets, the trust, my personal accounts, everything. We'd create a plausible reason, like a suspected corporate espionage attempt, that would give the banks all the justification they needed to lock it down instantly. The scope of the deception was breathtaking. We were creating an entire alternate reality for Chloe, a world where she was a wealthy, powerful co-owner of a thriving business, a property owner, and a woman of means. The hardest part of this, John, David said, his expression serious as our meeting concluded, is going to be on you. You have to go home tonight and every night and play the part of a loving, trusting fiancé who is on the verge of caving. You have to be convincing. One slip up, one moment of anger, and she'll get spooked. He was right. That night was one of the most difficult of my life. I went home and found Chloe cooking dinner, humming to herself. She turned and gave me a brilliant smile. Hey you, she said, wrapping her arms around my neck. Tough day. You have no idea, I said, my voice holding a double meaning she couldn't possibly detect. I had to force myself not to recoil from her touch. I had to smile back, to kiss her, to act like the same man I had been that morning. We ate dinner and I listened to her talk about her day, about her friend Jessica, about the wedding plans. It was like watching a movie where I knew the ending. Every word she spoke was a lie, and every loving gesture I returned was part of my own elaborate fiction. It was exhausting, a constant performance that drained me to my core. I felt like a spy in my own life. The following weeks were a masterclass in deception. I played the role of a man wrestling with his heart, slowly but surely being won over by the woman he loved. I would start conversations with, "I've been thinking about what you said," and let her fill in the blanks, guiding me toward the conclusions she wanted me to reach. I allowed her to see me looking at the house, a thoughtful expression on my face, as if I were imagining it as ours. The night I finally caved was a carefully staged production. I brought home a bottle of expensive wine, the kind we saved for special occasions. I found Chloe in the living room reading a magazine. I poured 2 glasses and sat down beside her on the sofa. "Chloe," I said, my voice thick with manufactured emotion, "I've been a fool, you were right." She put her magazine down, her eyes wide with anticipation. "What do you mean?" "I've been letting fear and cold logic dictate my decisions," I said, taking her hand. "David, the lawyers, they see the world in terms of risk and liability, but you see it in terms of love and trust, and that's the world I want to live in with you." I took a deep breath. "I want to prove it to you. I'll call David tomorrow. We'll start the process of adding you to the deed of the house, and I want to make you my partner. For real, we'll build this empire together." The look on her face was my first real reward. It was a flash of pure, unadulterated triumph, quickly masked by a flood of crocodile tears. She threw her arms around me, sobbing into my shoulder. "Oh, John, I knew you'd understand. I knew you loved me. You have no idea what this means to me. I'm so happy," she cried. I held her, patting her back, my stomach churning. She wasn't happy that I loved her. She was happy that her plan had worked. The next few days were a blur of activity. I made a great show of being on the phone with David, arguing with him about the details. I let Chloe overhear me saying things like, "No, David, she needs to be a majority partner. It's a matter of trust. And just draw up the papers. I don't care about the risk." The signing day was the peak of our performance. David had arranged for us to meet with a notary in a plush downtown office building. The notary, a retired judge and a trusted friend of David's, was in on the entire scheme. He played his part perfectly, exuding an air of solemn professionalism. David presented the stack of documents with a grim resignation that was entirely convincing. "John, I have to state for the record that I have advised you against this course of action," he said, looking me in the eye. "Your objection is noted, David," I replied firmly. "Let's proceed." I watched Chloe as she picked up the heavy, expensive pen. Her hand was steady. She read over the documents for JC Holdings, her face lighting up as she saw her name listed as the 51% shareholder and president. She signed with a flourish. Then came the quitclaim deed for the house with its intentionally incorrect parcel number. She signed that too, a serene smile on her face. The notary stamped and signed both documents with a satisfying thud. He handed her the notarized copies. She held them as if they were winning lottery tickets. That night she insisted on a celebration. We went to the most expensive restaurant in the city. Chloe was on fire, glowing with success. She was already acting like a different person, more confident, more imperious. She talked loudly about our company and the changes she planned to make. "The first thing we need to do is rebrand," she declared. "The company's image is too stale, and I think we need a bigger, more impressive office." I just nodded and smiled, playing the part of the indulgent partner. It felt like I was having dinner with a stranger, a greedy, entitled stranger who was wearing my fiancée's face. The final piece of the puzzle was the new bank account. The next day, I took her to a different bank, one known for its premium client services. We sat with a bank manager in a private office. "My fiancée and I are me. Arging our finances," I announced grandly. "We'd like to open a new joint wealth account. I'll be making an initial transfer of $100,000 to get us started." I made the transfer right there on my phone and showed her the new account balance. Her eyes nearly popped out of her head. It was more money than she had ever had access to in her life. She was given her own debit card for the account, a sleek black card that made her look and feel important. With all the pieces in place, it was time to set the stage for my exit. A week later, I came home in a rush. "Pack my bags," I said, feigning a frantic energy. "The Singapore deal, it's back on, but their CEO is only available for the next few days. I have to fly out tonight. It's a massive opportunity for the company, for our company." Her eyes lit up at the mention of a big deal. "Of course, how long will you be gone?" "A week, maybe 10 days, I said. "It's all last minute, I have to go now." She helped me pack, her mind clearly buzzing with the possibilities of her new life. She was no longer a freelance consultant, she was the co-owner of an international tech firm. At the door, she gave me a long, passionate kiss. "Go get him, CEO," she whispered. "I'll be here holding down the fort." "I know you will," I said, looking her in the eyes one last time. "You have everything under control." I got in a taxi and told the driver to take me to the airport. He dropped me off at the departure terminal and I watched Chloe's car pull away. As soon as she was out of sight, I walked to the other end of the terminal, hailed another cab, and gave the driver the address of a quiet, upscale hotel in a city an hour away. The trap was set. Now all I had to do was wait for it to spring. My hotel room was spacious and anonymous, a neutral ground far removed from the emotional battlefield of my own home. I had a king-sized bed, a desk overlooking the city, and most importantly, a secure, high-speed internet connection. This room was my command center for the final act. I laid out my laptop and my phone, checked my banking apps, and sent a single coded text to David. "The eagle has left the nest." He replied almost instantly with a simple thumbs-up emoji. Everything was ready. The first 24 hours were eerily quiet. I spent the time exercising in the hotel gym, ordering room service, and watching movies. It was a strange, suspended period of calm before the inevitable storm. Part of me was anxious, wired with anticipation. Another part felt a profound sense of peace. For the first time in months, I didn't have to perform. I didn't have to smile at Chloe or pretend to be in love or listen to her thinly veiled plans for my fortune. I could just be myself, a man waiting for justice. The first sign of activity came late in the afternoon on the second day. A notification popped up on my phone from my banking app. It was for the new joint account, the one with the $100,000. Alert: attempted withdrawal of $50,000 from account ending in 8812. Status: declined, exceeds daily limit. I smiled. It had begun. I pictured the scene vividly, Chloe brimming with confidence walking into a high-end luxury car dealership. She's already picked out the model, a sleek silver convertible. She's test-driven it, breathed in the new leather smell, and is now sitting at the salesman's desk, ready to put down a hefty deposit. She slides her new black debit card across the desk. "I'll put $50,000 down today," she says with a casual air. The salesman runs the card. His smile falters. He runs it again. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he says, his voice laced with professional embarrassment. "It seems to have been declined." Her confusion, her indignation, her insistence that he try again, the growing sense of humiliation as she realizes the card, her symbol of newfound wealth, is useless. It was a small, delicious taste of what was to come. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Chloe. "Chloe, hey, weirdest thing. The new card isn't working, tried to buy something and it was declined. Must be a glitch." I ignored it. I had to let the pressure build. An hour later, another text. "Chloe, are you there? The bank said there's a $500 limit on the card. Did you set that up? You need to call them and fix it. It was so embarrassing." I continued to ignore it. I could feel her frustration mounting through the screen. She was used to getting what she wanted, especially from me. My silence was a new and unwelcome experience for her. The next morning, the real panic began. Having failed to buy her car, she must have decided to access the business accounts, perhaps to prove her authority or to make a large transfer. My phone started ringing. It was Chloe. I let it go to voicemail. A second later, a string of texts came through in rapid succession. "Chloe, John, pick up the phone. It's an emergency." "Chloe, I tried to log into the company's financial portal and my credentials don't work." "Chloe, I see. Called the bank for the business accounts and they said everything is under a security freeze. They wouldn't tell me anything else." "Chloe, what is going on? Call me now." I sent another text to David. Phase 2. He was ready. This was the moment he would begin his role as the unmovable legal wall. I can only imagine the frantic calls she must have made next. First, to David's office. His assistant, who was also briefed, would have politely informed her that Mr. Miller was in a deposition and could not be disturbed. Then she likely tried calling the bank again, this time probably dropping my name and her new title as majority partner. The bank, following the strict protocol we had established, would have calmly informed her that due to a potential security breach, all assets of the company and its primary trustee, John, were temporarily frozen and could only be unfrozen by him. Her world was crumbling and she had no idea why. The power and control she had felt just 48 hours earlier had evaporated, replaced by a terrifying powerlessness. Her final desperate move would have been to look at the deed to the house, her last remaining symbol of security. She probably called a different lawyer, a litigator, reading him the details of the documents she had signed. I would have paid a lot of money to be a fly on the wall for that conversation. "Lawyer, okay, you have a quitclaim deed. Read me the parcel number." "Chloe, it's 1234598. "Lawyer, and the county recorder's office has a record of this filing." "Chloe, I have a notarized copy." "Lawyer, ma'am, a notarized copy is nice, but it's the filing that makes it official. Let me just check the county database. Okay, I see parcel number 123458878. It's registered solely to a John, my last name. The number you gave me, ending in 978, that parcel doesn't exist." The phone calls to me became relentless. Dozens of missed calls. Voicemails filled with a rising tide of panic, anger, and confusion. "John, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it's not funny. People at the bank are treating me like a criminal. David won't take my calls. You need to fix this. Our money is locked away." "What did you do? Answer me." I sat in my quiet hotel room, the phone buzzing incessantly on the desk beside me. The power had shifted so completely it was almost dizzying. She, who had held all the emotional power over me for months, was now reduced to a frantic, helpless voice on a voicemail. Her carefully constructed world had been revealed as a fragile house of cards, and the slightest breeze had blown it all away. I let her panic for the rest of the day. I let her exhaust every option, hit every dead end, until she was left with nothing but the terrifying realization that something was fundamentally and irrevocably wrong. As evening fell, I picked up my phone. I didn't call her back. I didn't listen to the latest voicemail. It was time to end it. It was time for the reckoning. The buzzing of my phone finally stopped. The frantic energy on the other end had exhausted itself, replaced by a waiting, dreadful silence. Chloe knew. She may not have known how or why, but she knew she had been played. Now was the time to show her the full extent of her miscalculation. I opened a new text message. I didn't type any words at first. I simply attached an image, the clearest screenshot I had of the conversation between her and Jessica. The one where she called me naive and outlined her plan to leave me after a year or two. I let that sit there for a moment, a digital bomb waiting to detonate. Then I typed out my message. I wrote and rewrote it several times, honing it until every word was a cold, sharp blade. I know everything, Chloe. You never loved me. You only loved what I had. The documents you signed are worthless. The company you think you own is an empty shell. The house you think you co-own is not yours. The accounts are and always have been under my sole control. The life you tried to steal doesn't exist. The locks on the house have been changed. A security guard is there to ensure you don't try to enter. My lawyer will be in touch with you tomorrow to arrange a time for you to retrieve your personal belongings under supervision. You will be allowed to take only what you brought into this relationship, nothing more. You called me naive. You saw my love as leverage. That was your mistake. You have the $500 you can get from the joint account. Consider it severance. Don't ever contact me again. I hit send. The response was instantaneous. My phone lit up with an incoming call from her. I declined it. Another call declined. A text message appeared. Chloe, John, please, we need to talk. That's not what it looks like. Let me explain. I took a screenshot of her text with its pathetic, transparent lie. I sent it back to her with one final word, goodbye. Then I blocked her number. I blocked her on every social media platform. I digitally erased her from my life. It was over. The silence that followed was the most peaceful sound I had ever heard. I sat in my hotel room for a long time, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled. I didn't feel triumphant or celebratory. I didn't feel the thrill of revenge that I thought I would. Instead, I felt a quiet, somber relief. The heavy weight of the deception I had been carrying for months was finally gone. The performance was over. The next day, I checked out of the hotel and drove not to the house, but to a new apartment I had leased downtown. It was clean, modern, and empty. It was a blank slate. David handled the final, messy details. He coordinated with a shell-shocked Chloe for what he later described as a brief and joyless retrieval of her clothes and personal effects. He said she was pale and silent, her arrogance completely stripped away. She took her suitcases and left without a word. She didn't get a house, she didn't get a business, she didn't get a payday. She got a few boxes of her things and a hard lesson in underestimating her target. The weeks that followed were about cleansing. I sold the house. As beautiful as it was tainted by her memory. Every room held a ghost. I couldn't stand to be there. The profit from the sale went into my business and a new home that I would one day build for myself on my own terms. I threw myself back into my work, but this time it was different. I was no longer building an empire for someone else. I was building it for me. The experience had wounded me, there was no doubt about that. It would be a long time before I could trust someone so completely again. The man who wore his heart on his sleeve was gone, replaced by someone more cautious, more guarded. But I was not broken. I had faced the ultimate betrayal and had not only survived but had emerged stronger and smarter. I had my business, my integrity, and the unwavering loyalty of a true friend in David. Chloe had tried to take everything from me, but in the end, the only thing she managed to destroy was the lie she had built. I was left with the truth, and with that, I could rebuild anything. So to anyone out there listening, here's my question. When you discover a deep betrayal, is it better to confront it with immediate, fiery emotion or with cold, calculated justice? I chose the latter, and while the path was difficult, I can tell you that the silence on the other end of that final text message was worth every moment of the performance.